The series begins with our protagonist standing inside his modest restaurant, waiting eagerly for his wife and his father to arrive so they can celebrate his wedding anniversary together. When they finally join him, the three sit down to dinner, but his wife cannot hide her anxiety. The place is expensive, and all she can think about are the debts piling up on their shoulders. She gently reminds him that it would have been wiser to save this money and pay off what they owe. But the protagonist reassures her with confidence. He promises that things are about to change, that he will soon make a lot of money and become a well-known, successful lawyer. In that very moment, he receives an important phone call. Excusing himself from the table, he steps out, unaware that his life is about to take a dramatic turn. As he drives away, he suddenly feels dizzy, loses control, and gets into a serious car accident. The story then takes us back a week earlier. We see him preparing in the morning, getting ready to head to court. It becomes clear that he is a struggling lawyer, overlooked and unlucky. His poverty and lack of connections constantly work against him, causing him to lose every case he takes on. His wife urges him to win this particular case because it directly concerns their future. We learn that he had been scammed and lost the money that could have saved them, and now the victims of that same scam have hired him to defend them. He heads to court, accompanied by his father-in-law, who also happens to be the manager of his small office. Despite everything, the protagonist enters the courtroom full of optimism, even telling his father-in-law that he knows the judge and that they are sure to win. But the moment they step inside, they are hit with a shocking surprise. The judge has been replaced, and a powerful, well-known law firm has taken over the defense for the opposing side. As expected, he loses the case once again. The consequences are immediate and brutal. The victims he represented, furious over losing their rights, beat both him and his father-in-law. Meanwhile, his wife calls to check on him, but when she learns that he lost again, she completely loses control. Overwhelmed with frustration and disappointment, she tells him not to come back home and even demands a divorce. That night, his father-in-law stands by his side. Quietly, he helps him leave the house, handing him a bag of clothes so he can spend the night at the office. Their daughter notices what's happening and calls out to her father, confused and hurt by his decision to support her husband instead of her. He calmly explains that she is strong and can live on her own, but the protagonist cannot survive without help. At that moment, an unexpected opportunity appears. The governor calls the protagonist and asks to meet him immediately. Without hesitation, he rushes over. The governor presents him with a strange and dangerous offer to defend 3 suspects accused of murdering a doctor named Sio, a respected physician at one of the largest hospitals. The suspects include a fellow doctor, the hospital's lawyer, and the son of the institution's owner. The crime was exposed when the 3 were transporting the doctor's body in a car and got into an accident, causing the corpse to be discovered in the trunk. When the police arrested and interrogated them, each one blamed the others. The governor explains that the suspects specifically requested a weak, incompetent lawyer, someone who would merely act as a front and follow their instructions blindly. At first, the protagonist refuses, but then the governor reveals a shocking secret. There is a video recording of the entire crime. He asks the protagonist to act as a double agent, pretend to obey the suspects, while secretly carrying out the governor's orders. The governor also admits that these very suspects were the reason he rose to power, but now they have become a liability due to their interference in political matters, and he wants them eliminated. To seal the deal, he offers the protagonist a large sum of money, in addition to the legal fees he will receive from the suspects. Desperate and with nothing left to lose, the protagonist accepts the case. He consults a colleague, then meets the suspects the next day. They are impressed by him and believe he will follow their commands. Suddenly, the governor calls them, informing them that news about the crime video has begun to spread. Alarmed, they end the call and dismiss the protagonist, but this was all part of his plan. He had already arranged for his colleague to leak that information. Before leaving the holding cell, he secretly plants a listening device, allowing him to overhear the suspects. From their conversation, he learns that the video is in the possession of the murdered doctor's wife. He immediately heads to her with the governor. However, just moments before they arrive, a hired assassin attacks her. She manages to cry out for help, and they rush in to save her. During the chaos, they hear a recording confirming that she indeed has the video. The protagonist pressures her, warning that she could be imprisoned for hiding evidence in a murder case. Under pressure, she hands over the recording and reveals the name of a fourth person involved, a powerful businessman with immense influence. When the protagonist finally watches the video, the truth becomes horrifyingly clear. The three suspects are seen murdering the doctor because he refused to hand over confidential research papers they wanted. As the gravity of the situation sinks in, the governor tries to contact the protagonist, but he ignores the call. Meanwhile, his financial troubles reach their peak. Creditors move to seize his home, and when he returns, he finds his wife in tears. They argue intensely, but he tries to calm her, promising that he will fix everything. He hands her a bag of money, which accidentally spills open, revealing a large amount of cash. Shocked, she asks where it came from. With a calm but determined tone, he tells her that he has taken on a major case and that this is only the first payment. He assures her that soon everything will be different and he will finally set their lives right again. The next day, the protagonist meets the powerful businessman involved in the case. He tries to bargain with him, offering the video in exchange for a huge amount of money. But the businessman mocks him, dismisses him with arrogance, and throws him out without a second thought. Shortly after, the governor calls and asks about the video. The protagonist calmly replies that he plans to hand it over personally to the prosecutor. Then, without explanation, he distances himself from his wife, as if trying to protect her from what's coming. On his way to deliver the video, something strange happens. Someone offers him a drink, claiming it's a gift from the restaurant. Trusting it, he drinks it, only to suddenly lose control of his body. Within moments, he gets into a violent car accident. Miraculously, he survives. He wakes up the next day in the hospital, finding his wife and father-in-law standing anxiously by his side. As soon as he regains some strength, he prepares to go meet the prosecutor. But before he can leave, the police storm in and arrest him from the hospital, accusing him of drug use. In that instant, he remembers the drink and realizes it had been drugged. The governor meets him again and demands to know what happened to the video. The protagonist tells him it disappeared after the accident and claims the businessman must be behind it. Suspicious, the governor asks how the businessman even knew the video was with him. The protagonist falls silent. The governor then reveals that he already knows about their meeting and about the attempted deal. With no choice left, the protagonist confesses that he watched the video and discovered the truth. The suspects killed the doctor over secret research. He promises the governor that he will find that research no matter what. But the governor refuses to help him any further. Soon after, everything collapses. The police raid the protagonist's office under heavy security. They tear down the walls and uncover a hidden stash, bags filled with gold bars and large quantities of drugs. Money rains down from the ceiling as more evidence is revealed. At the same time, the protagonist is transferred to prison, the same prison where the three accused men are being held. It is one of the most dangerous prisons in Korea. The moment they arrive, the inmates and their men greet him with brutal violence. Meanwhile, the governor attends a gathering alongside the businessman, who deliberately humiliates him in front of everyone, belittling him openly. At that very moment, shocking news breaks. The protagonist is declared a dangerous criminal. Authorities claim they found drugs, gold, and cash in his office. They also reveal a name whispered in fear: Big Mouse. According to the reports, the protagonist is none other than this infamous figure, and he is accused of scamming the businessman out of a massive fortune. Back in prison, the nightmare intensifies. The accused men and their allies hang the protagonist from a rope like a noose, beating him mercilessly. The prison warden watches everything calmly through surveillance cameras. The protagonist begs for mercy, but they ignore his pleas and kick the chair from beneath him, leaving him to suffocate. As he hangs there, dying, a sudden call comes in. The businessman orders the warden to keep him alive, after discovering that the protagonist might truly be Big Mouse. The guards and doctors rush in, performing electric shocks and saving him at the last moment. Later, his wife arrives with his lawyer friend to visit him, but they are shocked to learn that he refused to see them. Inside, the warden throws him into a cell with hardened criminals. Outside, rumors spread quickly. His wife learns that he is being accused of serious crimes and that everyone believes he is Big Mouse. Journalists surround her, bombarding her with questions. Through tears, she insists on her husband's innocence, declaring that she trusts him completely. She vows that she will never allow him to refuse seeing her again. Inside his cell, the protagonist watches her on the news, deeply moved. For the first time, he breaks down in tears. The prosecutor begins interrogating him using a lie detector, trying to pin the charges on him. But the protagonist pushes back, arguing that such machines are not always accurate. Afterward, when he encounters the accused men again, he confronts them directly, insisting that he is not Big Mouse. Back in his cell, a fellow inmate approaches him, expressing admiration and calling him his role model. The protagonist tries desperately to convince him that he is innocent, but the man believes he is simply lying to protect himself. Elsewhere, it is revealed that the prosecutor is secretly working under the businessman's influence. Meanwhile, the protagonist's wife sits with his father-in-law and their lawyer, trying to find a way to save him. She concludes that the key lies in locating the murdered doctor's secret research. Inside the prison, rumors continue to spread. Some inmates believe he truly is Big Mouse, while others remain skeptical. One of the gang leaders, aligned with the accused, confronts him during a meal, throwing food at him and beating him viciously. Later, the warden orders that the protagonist be moved to a more luxurious holding area. He offers him good food and speaks to him calmly, asking him directly if he is truly Big Mouse. The protagonist firmly denies any connection. At that moment, the warden's expression darkens. Without warning, he strikes him and orders his assistant to place him in solitary confinement for 5 days. Alone in the darkness, the protagonist begins to reflect on his past, remembering the time he failed an important exam on purpose, forced to delay his studies for a year because he was too poor to afford university. In those difficult days, there was only one person who stood by his side and supported him, his classmate, the same woman who would later become his wife. She once told him that she would support him with the little money she had, and she kept her promise. With her help, the protagonist was able to enter university, finish his studies, and eventually open his own law office. Now, however, we see him sitting alone in solitary confinement, completely broken. Tears stream down his face as he repeats over and over that he wants to end his life. In his despair, he vows that before dying, he will expose the accused men and the powerful businessman in a suicide note that will reveal everything. The next day, he begins writing that letter, but the cell block leader notices him and snatches the paper, quickly realizing what he intends to do. He warns him not to go through with it, explaining that if he fails, the punishment from the warden and the guards would leave him permanently disabled. Still, the protagonist remains determined. At lunch, he carries his tray and deliberately pours the food over the head of a gang leader, provoking him, hoping to be killed and end his suffering. The gang leader explodes with anger, and his men rush to restrain the protagonist. But in a shocking moment, the protagonist breaks free and lands a powerful punch on the leader, something he has never done before. Everyone in the prison is stunned by his sudden courage and strength. Later, he hears about a prisoner sentenced to death, a serial killer who murdered 9 victims and was declared mentally unstable. The protagonist approaches him and provokes him, asking to be killed and become his 10th victim. The killer pulls out a weapon, and the protagonist pushes him further, insulting him and even bringing up his mother, slapping him repeatedly. But instead of attacking, the killer suddenly collapses, breaking down emotionally at the mention of his mother. The entire prison begins to talk about the protagonist. Some now see him as dangerous, a man no one can stand against, and he earns their respect. Yet, ironically, this newfound reputation makes it harder for him to carry out his plan to die. He then overhears a story about another prisoner who was shot and killed while trying to escape. Inspired, he decides to attempt the same fate. That night, he puts his plan into action. As the guards surround him with weapons drawn, he shouts at them, demanding that they kill him. But the warden suddenly orders them to stand down, and he is dragged back to his cell alive once again. Meanwhile, his wife takes a bold step. She applies for a job at the very hospital where the murdered doctor once worked. During her interview, she proves herself to be a highly skilled nurse and is hired. However, on her first day, her superiors and colleagues deliberately leave her alone, hoping she will fail. Instead, she handles everything with professionalism. When one patient suddenly goes into cardiac arrest, she immediately calls for help, but no one responds. Forced to act alone, she performs CPR and manages to save the patient's life. But instead of praise, the hospital director and staff reprimand her. Her supervisor coldly explains that the families of cancer patients on the 17th floor had requested that their loved ones not be resuscitated under any circumstances. Shocked and disturbed, she begins to sense that something is very wrong. Soon after, she witnesses a hospital employee persuading a patient's family member to sign a "do not resuscitate" order. This deepens her suspicion. She later tells her father that this must somehow be connected to the murdered doctor's secret research. At the same time, the lawyer informs her that the protagonist had asked him to deliver divorce papers for her to sign. Furious, she refuses to divorce him, rejecting the idea completely. Back in prison, the warden gathers the inmates and reveals a new system, dividing them into strict classes. The protagonist objects, demanding that the warden respect the law. Instead of punishing him directly, the warden is intrigued and assigns him to the lowest class as a form of control. The accused men, still watching him closely, send another inmate to kill him. The protagonist tries to escape, but the attacker overpowers him and attempts to finish him off. At the last second, the guards intervene and save him. The warden later tells him that his life is only being spared because the businessman ordered it, believing that he might truly be Big Mouse. He coldly warns that once the truth is revealed, both he and his family will be killed. But the protagonist, no longer afraid, stares back at him and boldly claims that he is Big Mouse. Elsewhere, the governor attends an interrogation session led by the prosecutor, and it is revealed that the hospital director is actually connected to him. Meanwhile, the protagonist and the lowest-class prisoners are forced to work in the prison's sewage system, treated like less than human. The guards give them inedible food, and when they protest, they are ignored. The protagonist then takes a stand. He tells the others to follow him if they want to eat. Together, they fill buckets with filthy sewage water and march toward the guards. In a shocking act of defiance, the protagonist throws the sewage water directly at them, in front of all the prisoners, marking the beginning of his transformation from a broken man into someone far more dangerous. The warden arrives furious, but the protagonist stands his ground until the very last moment. Without fear, he threatens the warden, warning that he will harm him and his family if he continues to push him. Surprisingly, the warden gives in and allows him to eat with the rest of the prisoners. In that moment, the protagonist achieves a symbolic victory, not just for himself, but for all the inmates who feel a sense of triumph through him. Later, his wife comes to visit him. She scolds him for wanting to divorce her, but he asks her to move on and live her life, explaining that he will either be executed or spend the rest of his life behind bars. But she refuses to abandon him. Instead, she stands firm, promising that she will prove his innocence no matter what. Because of his defiance, the warden throws him back into solitary confinement. Yet when he is finally released, one of the inmates from his group rushes to him, asking him to become their leader. He agrees, but on one condition. He tells his cellmate to spread the word. Anyone who joins them will have one wish granted. The message spreads throughout the prison, but only 2 prisoners accept the offer. The first is the cell block leader, whose wish is heartbreaking. He wants to find his daughter, who disappeared a year ago. He explains that he ended up in prison while searching for her. The second is the mentally unstable prisoner. He asks the protagonist to help his mother undergo surgery, revealing that she is suffering from cancer. He gives the name of the hospital where she is being treated, a hospital that turns out to be the same one run by the governor's wife. Meanwhile, the accused men strike a deal with the warden. They offer him a large sum of money in exchange for one chance to eliminate the protagonist. Once again, they send the same inmate, this time with several others, to finish the job. A violent clash erupts. The protagonist's allies defend him, but in a shocking twist, the mentally unstable prisoner betrays him and tries to stab him. At the last second, the cell block leader steps in and takes the blow in his place. Guards rush in and stop the chaos, taking the injured man to the hospital. The warden punishes everyone involved, throwing the protagonist, his ally, and the attackers into solitary confinement. Outside the prison, his wife takes a bold step. She attends a hospital conference and publicly announces that she possesses the late Dr. Seo's research. Soon after, the protagonist and his ally are released from solitary confinement. Meanwhile, the prisoner who attempted to kill him is found dead in his cell, having taken his own life. The other inmates begin to believe that the protagonist was behind it, and their respect and fear of him grows even stronger. Seeing this, the protagonist begins to fully embrace the persona of Big Mouse. The businessman then visits him in prison, trying to confirm whether he truly is Big Mouse. He asks him about 5 mysterious clients tied to a massive drug operation. The protagonist refuses to betray anyone, telling him he would never expose his clients. The businessman gives him an ultimatum: 1 week to reveal the names of those 5 clients, or he will be killed. Later, as a guard escorts him back to his cell, the protagonist attacks him, takes his phone, and calls the governor. He informs him about the businessman's demand and the deadly deadline. Meanwhile, the prisoners who had attacked him begged to be released from solitary confinement, terrified that he might kill them just like their fellow inmate. When they are finally released and return to eat with the others, one of them suddenly collapses, poisoned, and dies on the spot. Fear spreads like wildfire. The prisoners become even more terrified of the protagonist, while he himself stands confused, unable to fully understand everything happening around him. At the same time, the governor meets the protagonist's wife and hands her a document, asking her to deliver it to her husband. She visits him the next day and gives it to him, then asks whether she can trust the governor. The protagonist tells her that they have no choice. He is the only one who might be able to help them. Elsewhere, the businessman meets with the prosecutor and reveals a shocking truth. The list of names they gave the governor was fake, random names written just to trap the protagonist. Back in prison, rumors about the protagonist's power grow. The inmates begin placing bets, claiming he can eliminate the 3 accused men before the end of the month. His ally collects the bets, but is caught by the warden's men, beaten, and brought before the protagonist. Instead of backing down, the protagonist boldly declares that everyone who bet on him will win. One of the accused men wagers a large sum against him, confident that he will fail to name Big Mouse's clients. The next day, the tension reaches its peak. The protagonist is escorted out of his cell as prisoners cheer his name. The governor rushes to the prison, trying to reach him, but the warden blocks him. Inside, the final confrontation begins. The businessman writes down the names of the 5 clients and asks the protagonist to do the same. The warden reads the businessman's list first. It does not match the fake list previously given to the protagonist. Then he reads the protagonist's paper. Everyone is stunned. The names are exactly the same. In that moment, it becomes clear that Big Mouse had already outplayed them all, manipulating events from the shadows and even using his own network to scam the businessman out of a massive fortune. The business manager, who had been on the run, is eventually captured by the police. During the interrogation, the prosecutor questions him about Big Mouse. The man admits that he had encountered Big Mouse once before, but never saw his face. The prosecutor then shows him a photo of the protagonist and pressures him to lie, insisting that he identify him as Big Mouse. Just as the tension rises, the protagonist is brought in and confronted face-to-face with the manager, but before the man can speak, a phone alarm suddenly rings. It's time for his insulin injection. He calmly takes out the syringe and injects himself, only to collapse and die instantly before he can testify. The businessman is pushed to the edge of madness by what just happened. Soon after, he meets the protagonist's wife and tries to manipulate her, telling her that her husband has deceived her and that he is the real Big Mouse. He even threatens her, but she stands firm, looking him in the eye with confidence. She tells him that he cannot harm her because she is the wife of Big Mouse. After leaving, she immediately calls the governor and informs him about the meeting, explaining that the businessman now believes her husband is truly Big Mouse. Meanwhile, inside the prison, the protagonist collects the winnings from the inmate who had bet against him. He even gives a portion of the money to the warden, in exchange for privileges. Soon, he throws a celebration for the prisoners, and the entire prison echoes with chants of his name. But the accused men grow desperate. They want him gone. The protagonist confronts them directly, warning that death is closing in on them as long as they stand against him. He demands that they confess to killing the doctor and reveal that the businessman was the one who ordered it. They refuse. So he begins playing psychological games with them, tightening the pressure little by little. He even mocks the inmate who had bet against him, reinforcing his dominance. The governor visits him again, questioning his true identity. The protagonist responds coldly, saying that he will eliminate anyone who stands in his way, and advises the governor to stay on his side if he wants to survive. At the same time, the businessman visits the accused men in prison. They beg him to get them out and save them from the protagonist. But as soon as the businessman leaves, the protagonist is already waiting for him. He warns him to stay away from his wife, but the businessman dismisses him without concern. In that very moment, the businessman receives a call from his wife. She is terrified, telling him that someone has sent her funeral flowers, the kind used for the dead. The sender is the protagonist. Through this, he sends a clear message: if the businessman ever goes near his wife again, he will make his entire family pay the price. The protagonist then strikes a secret deal with the gang leader who had been protecting the accused men. He convinces him and his crew to work under his command. He orders them to kidnap the doctor among the accused, isolating him from the others. He tells the doctor that if he confesses to the crime, he might receive a lighter sentence, since he was only driving the car and not directly involved in the killing. But when the doctor refuses, the protagonist hangs him from a noose, just like they once did to him, until fear finally forces him to obey. Elsewhere, the governor meets the protagonist's wife and tells her bluntly that her husband is the real Big Mouse. She is left shaken, especially when her father confirms that the protagonist had suddenly paid off all their debts in one payment. The realization hits her hard. How could he have done that? Overwhelmed, she walks away in tears, unable to process the truth. The next day, she joins a volunteer medical team from the hospital visiting the prison, determined to see her husband. When she arrives, the assistant warden recognizes her immediately and informs the protagonist. He becomes visibly excited, preparing to meet her. The assistant even apologizes to her for not welcoming her properly earlier. Word quickly spreads among the prisoners. They all realize she is the wife of the man they now fear and respect. One by one, they greet her with deep respect, leaving her colleagues confused by the unusual scene. The protagonist arranges for her to visit him in the VIP cell area. He smiles the moment he sees her, but his expression changes when he notices her sadness. He realizes that she doubts him. Before they can speak freely, he notices the warden spying on them, so he takes her outside into the prison yard. There, he finally tells her the truth. He explains that the day before the bet, someone attacked him, choked him until he lost consciousness, and left behind a paper containing the real names of the clients. Later, when he saw the governor approaching him before the bet, he realized that the list the governor had was fake. He confesses that the real Big Mouse is someone else, someone secretly helping him, and that he has been forced to pretend to be Big Mouse just to survive inside the prison. Hearing this, her anger fades, and she begins to understand. She returns to her colleagues and continues helping serve food to the prisoners. When the protagonist enters to eat, the entire prison greets him with respect in front of her and her co-workers. As he walks past the head nurse, he quietly tells her that he knows her husband is imprisoned for a hit-and-run case. He warns her not to mistreat his wife, hinting that he has influence even beyond the prison walls. That night, a shocking call comes in. The wife of one of the hospital patients contacts the protagonist's wife, claiming she knows the location of Dr. Seo's research. She demands money in exchange for the information. Suspicious, the protagonist's wife asks for proof. The woman tells her that the research is hidden inside a necklace and describes it in detail. But before anything more can be said, something horrifying happens. In a sudden, brutal moment, someone pushes the woman off the building. She falls to her death right in front of the protagonist's wife. After some time, the protagonist's wife suddenly remembers something. She recalls seeing her supervisor wearing a necklace that looks exactly like the one the patient's wife had described before her death. Suspicion immediately takes over. She approaches her supervisor, pretending everything is normal, and politely asks to see the necklace. She tries to open it, hoping to find something hidden inside, but it's too small and tightly sealed. Her supervisor quickly becomes defensive and tells her that instead of accusing people without evidence, she should go to the police. Meanwhile, inside the prison, the protagonist learns that the accused men have submitted a request to leave prison under the excuse of receiving medical treatment. Realizing the danger, he brings the doctor among the accused to him and threatens him. If he doesn't confess to the murder in court, he will kill him. At the same time, his wife discovers a shocking video showing her supervisor and a colleague with the doctor's wife, the same woman who had been killed. In the video, the woman is clearly wearing the same necklace. She also realizes that the accused doctor had been abusing his wife terribly and that Dr. Seo had once saved her from him. The footage shows her crying over Dr. Seo, revealing a deeper truth behind the crime. Back in prison, the three accused men put on suits, preparing to leave, but just as they are about to go, they are stopped, shocked to discover that the doctor among them had planned to betray them and confess everything. The gang leader had been the one to reveal this information. At first, it seems like the protagonist has been outplayed, but then the truth unfolds. The two remaining accused realize that the doctor will not be leaving with them. His medical release request was never submitted. They laugh, believing they've outsmarted everyone. But the reality is the opposite. The protagonist had deceived them all. The gang kidnaps the doctor and ties him up, and the leader orders his execution. But just in time, the protagonist arrives with his men, demanding that they hand the doctor over peacefully. The leader refuses, and a violent fight breaks out between both sides. In the chaos, the protagonist saves the doctor. Then, in a shocking twist, it is revealed that the gang leader had been working with the protagonist all along. Their earlier conflict had been nothing more than an act, carefully staged to deceive the accused men and make it appear as though the leader had betrayed him, when in fact he had always been on his side. Meanwhile, at the hospital, another patient suddenly collapses. The protagonist's wife tries to save him, but despite her efforts, he dies. She breaks down in tears, but instead of giving up, she becomes even more determined to uncover the truth. That night, she secretly enters the morgue. Carefully, she takes a blood sample from the dead patient, intending to analyze it. But as she tries to leave, she is shocked to find her supervisor, the hospital director, and even the governor standing right in front of her. Her supervisor searches her, but finds nothing. Unknown to them, she had anticipated this moment and cleverly hid the sample beside the corpse before stepping out. Later, she quietly retrieves it. As she tries to leave the building, the elevator suddenly stops. Panic sets in when she realizes she is not alone. There is a masked man inside, attempting to kill her. She fights back with everything she has, but he overpowers her and begins to strangle her. Just as she is about to lose her life, the elevator doors suddenly open. The governor appears. The attacker immediately flees, and the governor saves her at the last second. She later hands the blood sample to her father, who gives it to a forensic specialist for analysis. Back in prison, the protagonist discovers that Big Mouse has been secretly communicating with him, leaving hidden messages inside a book in a church. It turns out that he had previously ordered his men to break a statue during a staged fight, then replaced it with a new one, inside which he had hidden a camera. His goal was to uncover the true identity of Big Mouse. Through the camera footage, he sees his colleague entering the church and approaching the book. Suspicious, he confronts him in private, threatening to kill him if he doesn't reveal the truth. But the colleague insists he has done nothing. The protagonist warns him to stay away or face deadly consequences. When he reviews the surveillance footage again, he notices something strange. 30 minutes are missing. That missing time is when the real Big Mouse must have entered and placed the message in the book. The truth slowly becomes clearer. His colleague eventually realizes that the protagonist is not the real Big Mouse, that he has only been following someone else's instructions. Furious, he confronts him, accusing him of deception and reminding him of the promises he made to fulfill everyone's wishes. The protagonist silences him coldly, warning him to stay quiet if he wants to stay alive. Meanwhile, the businessman visits the protagonist's cellmate and offers him a deal: freedom in exchange for carrying out a task. He hands him several juice bottles and instructs him to distribute them among the inmates. One specific bottle is meant for the protagonist. He explains that once the protagonist drinks it, he will suffer severe stomach pain. The cellmate follows the orders. He gives the juice to the protagonist, who drinks it without suspicion. Soon after, he collapses in pain and is rushed to the hospital by ambulance. At that very moment, his wife and her father are on their way to visit him. When they learn from his cellmate that he has been taken to the hospital, they immediately rush after the ambulance, fear and urgency driving them forward, unsure of what awaits them next. The protagonist's wife takes him to the same hospital where she works. She stays by his side, taking care of him until his condition improves. Once he recovers, he is discharged and prepared to be transferred back to prison. But on the way, everything goes wrong. The guards attempt to drug him again. He fights back fiercely, managing to beat them at first, but in the end, they overpower him and kidnap him. Behind it all are the businessman and the prosecutor. They take him to a psychiatric hospital where they torture him mercilessly, trying to force him to reveal the location of the hidden money so they can eliminate him afterward. Despite the pain, the protagonist struggles to stay mentally strong. Eventually, he gives them a location, a mountain where he used to go often with his wife. The businessman, the prosecutor, and the accused men rush to the place, hoping to find everything. They discover a bag, but inside, there is only a single gold bar. Furious and disappointed, they return to confront him. The protagonist is genuinely surprised that they even found that one gold bar, and in that moment, he realizes something. Big Mouse has been watching everything. Trying to buy time, he tells the businessman that he will reveal the rest of the gold, but only after he gets food. He begins eating slowly, stalling for as long as possible. At that very moment, chaos erupts. A fire breaks out in the hospital, firefighters rush in, and among them is the protagonist's ally, disguised. He quickly reaches him, hands him a car key, and tells him to escape immediately. The protagonist escapes, but the businessman's men chase the car, only to realize too late that it's his ally driving it. A high-speed chase follows, ending in a tragic crash that kills the ally instantly. The protagonist sees his friend's lifeless body and drives away, shattered. Now everything spirals out of control. The police launch a massive manhunt for him, searching everywhere. He goes into hiding, then contacts his wife and asks her to announce that he will appear in a live broadcast at the exact same time as the trial of the 3 accused men. Soon, the entire nation watches as he appears live. He asks his wife to stream the courtroom proceedings, and as he begins speaking, something unbelievable happens. Every detail he predicts starts unfolding seconds later in real time. He declares that the court will rule the accused innocent and that the prosecutor is working for them. And exactly as he says, it happens. He reveals that he had once possessed the video of the murder but was ambushed on his way to deliver it, and it was taken from him. He explains that he knows every detail of the case because he was originally assigned as their defense lawyer. Inside the courtroom, the businessman signals the prosecutor to request a break. During that break, he meets with the doctor's wife, who makes a deal. She demands a divorce and all her rights from her husband, and in return, she will hand over Dr. Seo's research. She also reveals the protagonist's location. Immediately, the businessman sends a police force to arrest him. Back in court, the judge resumes the session and officially declares the 3 accused men not guilty. Reporters surround them and the prosecutor, but suddenly, a large truck pulls up in front of the courthouse. A giant screen lights up. On it, a video begins to play, showing the businessman speaking with the doctor's wife, openly discussing the murder of Dr. Seo and the involvement of the accused men. Every word is broadcast live. The businessman realizes too late he has been exposed. The truck doors open, and the protagonist steps out. He walks forward calmly, standing in front of the accused men and the prosecutor. He tells the prosecutor that he has no grounds to appeal the verdict. Then, leaning closer, he whispers that he will not rest until all of them are imprisoned. Turning to the media, he declares that he is not Big Mouse and that he will soon prove it. Meanwhile, chaos erupts. The businessman's men attack the doctor's wife, along with the protagonist's father-in-law and his friend, in retaliation for exposing them. But the governor arrives just in time and forces the businessman to back off. The police then arrest the protagonist and return him to prison. Later, his lawyer friend brings him unexpected news. His cellmate, the one believed to be dead, is actually alive and recovering in the hospital. Shocked, the protagonist asks him to deliver a message to that man, asking him one question: who is the real Big Mouse? The businessman visits him again in prison, offering him a deal: join him in a major investment, and in return, he will repay the money he lost. It's clear that the businessman still believes the protagonist is Big Mouse. At the same time, a deeper truth is revealed. The governor, the businessman, and the accused men all answer to a higher authority, a powerful figure who controls them from the shadows. The accused men confront this leader, warning him that if they are imprisoned, he will be exposed as well. But he silences them coldly, telling them that they cannot threaten him, and that they must face the consequences of their actions. Then the governor enters, handing over Dr. Seo's research to this leader. He assures him that nothing can threaten him anymore. But as he leaves, the accused men confront the governor, and the truth finally comes out. It was the governor who orchestrated everything. He was the one who planned the murder of Dr. Seo. Afterward, he arranged for the accident that exposed the body, ensuring that the 3 accused men would be caught and take the blame. Now he looks at them without remorse and blames them for ruining his perfectly planned crime. After that, a hidden truth begins to unfold. We see a secret vault being opened, one that had remained concealed all this time. Inside, it is filled with gold bars stacked in silence, along with highly confidential files that clearly hold dangerous secrets. At the same time, the forensic doctor who had been analyzing the blood sample from the deceased patient finishes his work and goes directly to the hospital director to deliver the results. During their conversation, he reveals that it was the protagonist's wife who had asked him to analyze the sample. This immediately raises suspicion. The director wastes no time. She summons the protagonist's wife and confronts her. With a cold and threatening tone, she orders her to resign immediately, warning her that if she refuses, she will file a legal case against her for misconduct. With no real choice left, the protagonist's wife is forced to resign from her job, leaving the hospital under pressure and frustration, but with even stronger determination to uncover the truth behind everything happening there. Meanwhile, Big Mouse leaves another mysterious message for the protagonist, telling him that if he wants to learn important secrets, he should come to the church at exactly 8 o'clock. The protagonist follows the instructions carefully and waits at the church, watching the clock tick closer to the hour. But when the clock strikes 8, instead of Big Mouse appearing, the prison warden suddenly shows up and boldly claims that he himself is the real Big Mouse. Despite the shocking statement, the protagonist refuses to believe him. Calm but firm, he tells him to pass a message to the real Big Mouse that he wants to meet him face to face. At the same time, an opportunity opens up inside the prison. An announcement is made that the prison is in need of a nurse, and the protagonist's wife immediately decides to apply. When she arrives, she is surprised to find her former supervisor from the hospital there, along with another nurse. They are all competing for the same position. During this moment, chaos suddenly erupts when the mentally unstable prisoner begins attacking another inmate. The guards respond by electrocuting him, causing him to collapse and lose his ability to speak. Without hesitation, the protagonist's wife rushes in, saves him, and stabilizes his condition. Her quick thinking and professionalism impress the administration, and she is chosen for the job. Back inside, the protagonist meets with the governor and the prosecutor. He plays for them a recording, one that exposes the warden claiming that he is the real Big Mouse. Not only that, but the recording also includes the warden confessing that he was responsible for poisoning the prisoners who died mysteriously. This evidence is more than enough to shake everything. An investigation is immediately launched, the warden is arrested, and he is stripped of his position. The prison erupts in relief and celebration as the inmates feel a sense of justice for the first time. The governor then appoints the assistant warden as the temporary head of the prison. But outside, events take a darker turn. The governor's wife is involved in a sudden car accident. As she regains consciousness in the hospital, the governor learns from his assistant that she had been drugged before driving. Someone had put something in her drink. In that moment, he realizes the truth. The protagonist has discovered his secrets. The method used is identical to the one they had once used to drug the protagonist and steal the murder video from him. At the same time, the former warden is thrown into prison. There, the new assistant warden brutally beats him and gathers a group of inmates loyal to him. He interrogates them about the identity of the real Big Mouse, but none of them have ever seen him or know who he truly is. In a desperate attempt to force answers, he isolates them and hangs one of them from a noose, threatening to kill him unless they confess. Just as things are about to turn deadly, the protagonist arrives with the gang leader and his men. They intervene and save the prisoner. The protagonist orders the assistant warden to release them and send them back to their cells, but the assistant refuses and speaks to him with arrogance and disrespect. The protagonist stands his ground, confronting him directly. When the guards are ordered to seize him, the gang leader and his men step forward in his defense. Outnumbered and pressured, the assistant is forced to back down, allowing the prisoners to leave. From that moment on, the inmates begin to unite against the assistant warden, fueled by anger and the desire for revenge. But the assistant soon discovers that his name is not even among the candidates for permanent warden. Desperate, he contacts the governor and tells him that the protagonist is protecting the former warden. He proposes a plan to secretly release the former warden so they can use him to lure out the real Big Mouse. The governor agrees. The assistant gathers all the prisoners and brings out the former warden and his group. He declares that they are followers of Big Mouse and claims that the protagonist is nothing but a fake. He insists that the real Big Mouse is somewhere inside the prison and announces that any prisoner who helps capture him will be granted a pardon and released. This creates chaos among the inmates. One prisoner attempts to attack the former warden, but the protagonist intervenes and stops him. In the heat of the moment, the same prisoner pushes the protagonist, now doubting his identity, and tries to strike him, but the gang leader steps in again and defends him, beating the attacker instead. As tension grows, the former warden is repeatedly beaten by different inmates, each one seeking revenge. Meanwhile, the protagonist sits with him privately and asks him to pass a message to Big Mouse, once again requesting a meeting. Elsewhere, tragedy strikes. The accused doctor learns where his wife is and goes to confront her. When he arrives, she pulls a knife, trying to defend herself and escape. But he overpowers her and kills her in cold blood. Shortly after, the governor arrives at the scene and finds her dead, with the doctor sitting beside her. Without hesitation, the governor calls the assistant warden and gives him strict orders. The assistant immediately begins preparing for chaos inside the prison. He instructs the guards to create unrest among the inmates and secretly orders the execution of both the protagonist and his wife. And just as the assistant warden had planned, the situation inside the prison explodes into chaos. He deliberately provokes the inmates, turning the entire prison into a battlefield of unrest and violence. At that very moment, the protagonist is sitting calmly inside the VIP cell, waiting for Big Mouse to appear. But instead of a mysterious figure, he is shocked to see the cell block leader, the very man who had once asked him to find his lost daughter, walk in and sit beside him. In that instant, the truth is revealed. The cell block leader is Big Mouse. The protagonist, stunned, demands to know why he went this far, why he built such a dangerous empire. With quiet pain, Big Mouse reveals the truth. Everything he did was to take revenge on the people who killed his daughter. He tells the protagonist that he cannot finish this alone anymore, that he needs his help to bring them all down. Before they can continue, urgent news arrives. The guards have stormed the medical ward, attempting to kill the protagonist's wife. Without hesitation, Big Mouse orders him to go save her. As he rushes out, the guards intercept him and begin beating him brutally. But just as things seem hopeless, the gang leader and his men intervene, fighting back and saving him. Meanwhile, the guards break into the medical room and attack his wife, but in an unexpected twist, the mentally unstable prisoner steps in and protects her. Moments later, the assistant warden arrives, furious. He beats the prisoner mercilessly and points a gun directly at the protagonist's wife, ready to kill her. But at the last possible second, the protagonist bursts in and saves her, attacking the assistant warden and stopping him. Then, suddenly, Big Mouse himself appears, along with the former warden. As chaos reaches its peak, Big Mouse turns to the former warden and signals him, and without hesitation, the former warden shoots and kills the assistant. The situation spirals out of control as the police surround the entire area, preparing to eliminate everyone inside. With no way out, the protagonist turns to Big Mouse and tells him that there is only one solution left. He must accept the deal he once offered him. The deal is simple but dangerous. Big Mouse must surrender himself and confess that he is the real Big Mouse. In return, the protagonist promises that once he is released and cleared, he will personally take revenge on those who killed Big Mouse's daughter. After a moment of silence, Big Mouse agrees. Knowing that the governor is behind everything, the protagonist immediately contacts the businessman and tells him that he is ready to hand over the real Big Mouse. Soon, the businessman arrives at the prison alongside the prosecutor, and the governor follows closely behind. In front of everyone, the protagonist hands Big Mouse over. The businessman claps, impressed, praising the protagonist for his intelligence. Shortly after, the protagonist is declared innocent and released from prison. His life changes overnight. He opens a massive law firm and quickly becomes the most famous lawyer in the country. At the same time, he publicly announces that he will defend Big Mouse. This creates shockwaves. The president had just approved increasing investments for the businessman's company after Big Mouse's capture. But when the protagonist openly supports Big Mouse and files for his release on bail, everything changes. The governor pressures the president, promising that he will handle the situation if Big Mouse is released. Eventually, Big Mouse is granted bail. The protagonist personally takes him to his restaurant. But just as they are about to leave, a sudden explosion destroys the place, killing Big Mouse instantly. Before the protagonist can even process what happened, an assassin appears and attacks him, attempting to finish him off. But once again, his ally arrives at the last moment and saves him, promising that he will protect both him and his wife. It is then revealed that Big Mouse is not just a man, it is an entire secret organization. The protagonist recalls that Big Mouse once told him someone inside the organization had ordered his protection when he first entered prison. When he asks his ally about it, the ally denies being the one who gave that order. He explains that he only recently joined the organization and that no one could issue such a command unless they were one of the top 3 leaders. The protagonist asks who these 3 leaders are, but his ally refuses to answer. Instead, he tells him that there will soon be a meeting of the organization and he will find his answers there. When they arrive, the meeting turns out to be something unexpected. It is a funeral for Big Mouse. The highest-ranking members of the organization are present, including powerful figures from different sectors. Among them, the protagonist is shocked to see the former warden, who has been released on bail. When he asks about his rank, his ally tells him that the former warden is the 3rd highest member of the organization. Then, a recorded video from Big Mouse is played. In it, he leaves a final message, naming the protagonist as his successor, the new leader of the organization. The former warden immediately objects, accusing the protagonist of fabricating the video. But before things can escalate further, another shocking truth emerges. The protagonist's own lawyer friend steps forward and calmly admits that he was the one secretly acting as Big Mouse all along. It is revealed that he is the 2nd most powerful figure in the organization, right below the original Big Mouse. The protagonist stands frozen in shock as the truth crashes down on him. The person he trusted the most was the one who had been manipulating everything from the very beginning, even the order to protect him when he first entered prison. After everything that had been revealed, the protagonist finally sits down with his closest friend, the one he had trusted all along, and demands the full truth. Slowly, the hidden story begins to unfold. He learns that Big Mouse's daughter had been a reporter, a brave woman who had been investigating the secret research of Dr. Seo. Her investigation had brought her dangerously close to exposing powerful figures, and because of that, she was killed. Dr. Seo himself had been ready to testify in her case and reveal everything, but he was murdered just 1 day before he could speak. That revelation changes everything. From that moment on, the protagonist no longer sees himself as just a survivor. He becomes a leader. Together with the organization, he begins executing a carefully planned revenge strategy, targeting everyone involved in the conspiracy, one step at a time. Meanwhile, the governor begins to unravel. In a rare moment of honesty, he confesses to his wife that he was the one who ordered Dr. Seo's death. He tells her he acted under direct orders from the president. The next day, his wife takes drastic action. She orders the destruction of the secret laboratory hidden within the hospital. When questioned about her sudden decision, she calmly explains that the lab had already been exposed after recent events, and it was no longer safe to keep it. Instead, she asks the president to grant her control over the investment share that had originally been promised to the businessman. Despite the businessman's visible anger and loss, the president agrees. Not long after, an assassination attempt is made on the governor. 2 attackers ambush him, but he fights back and manages to overpower them. Around the same time, the former prison warden is released along with his loyal men. The protagonist, maintaining his influence, rewards him with a restaurant as a gesture of appreciation for his support. Soon after, the protagonist's friend informs him that the governor had been attacked and that the former warden was behind it. Without hesitation, the protagonist sends his ally along with another man to confront the warden. When they find him, the warden claims that he is simply avenging his former boss after his death, but then he turns aggressive toward the protagonist, declaring that he is not fit to lead the organization. Before things escalate further, the protagonist's friend strikes the warden with a billiard ball, knocking him down. They tie him up inside a car, pour gasoline over it, and prepare to burn him alive. But at the last moment, it is revealed that this was only a threat. The protagonist intervenes, ordering them to bring the warden to him. He tells him that his revenge will be slow and painful, that killing him instantly would be too merciful. As the political tension rises, reporters surround the governor, asking about the recent attack. He confidently assures them that he is fine and announces that he has no intention of running for governor again. Instead, he will run for parliament. But almost immediately after, the protagonist shocks the public by announcing his own candidacy for governor. He approaches the businessman, asking for his support in the election and requesting a meeting with the president. The meeting is arranged. When the protagonist enters, the governor is already there, and he is visibly shocked to see him. The protagonist greets the president with confidence and begins explaining that one of the top members of the Big Mouse organization has now taken control and is planning to kill him and his family. He asks the president for support, promising that if he becomes governor, he will use his power to serve him. To prove his words, he hands over a list of names, members of the organization spread across powerful positions in society. The president, convinced, agrees to support him. The governor, however, is clearly disturbed by this sudden shift in power. At the same time, the protagonist reveals to the businessman that the $100 billion he lost was never in Big Mouse's possession. It had been taken by someone else entirely. This shakes the businessman, planting doubt and fear in his mind. Soon after, the protagonist summons the former warden and gives him a strange mission to retrieve an elderly man from a nursing home. Meanwhile, the president prepares for his birthday celebration, and the protagonist and his wife are invited to attend. But just before leaving, the protagonist receives a message from the warden. Sensing something urgent, he tells his wife to go ahead without him and leaves to meet him. Unbeknownst to him, his ally begins following the warden and his men, but they realize they are being watched. They ambush him, knock him unconscious, and take him away. At the celebration, the protagonist's wife greets the president warmly, but elsewhere, a trap is unfolding. The warden betrays the protagonist, tying him up and preparing to kill him. He calls the governor and shows him the moment, as if delivering proof of his loyalty. The protagonist's ally, barely conscious, manages to witness what is happening and calls the protagonist's wife, telling her that the warden has killed him and that the governor was behind it. In shock and grief, she rushes to confront the governor, hitting him in desperation. But he ignores her completely, getting into his car with a cold smile, satisfied with what he believes has happened. Overwhelmed, she collapses. Later, the governor meets the warden and sees blood, asking about the body. The warden calmly tells him that he has already disposed of it. In a chilling moment, the governor reveals his ultimate plan. He intends to kill the president and take his place. What he doesn't know is that everything is being recorded, because the protagonist is still alive. The entire scene was part of his plan to expose the governor in front of the president. When the truth comes out, the president thanks him and promises to grant him anything he asks for. But before anything can be done, the governor moves first. He assassinates the president. A deeper truth is revealed. The president had once killed the governor's father and grandfather and seized their company. This was never just politics, it was personal revenge. The protagonist attends the president's funeral with his team, and the governor is left in complete shock when he sees him alive. The protagonist approaches him calmly and whispers that he knows the truth, that he killed the president, and that very soon the whole world will know. Meanwhile, the businessman meets with the president's lawyer to understand the inheritance. He learns that the president had distributed his wealth equally among them, but was planning to change his will before his death. The businessman realizes he may have lost everything. The protagonist later contacts him again, asking for his support in the election. But now that the president is gone, the businessman abandons him. Even when the protagonist confronts him and tells him the president was murdered, the businessman shows no interest. Power is all that matters to him. Still, the protagonist warns him that he will return and that he will force him to cooperate after the will is officially read. But the businessman mocks him, saying he has already seen the will and knows exactly what he has gained. When everyone gathers for the official reading, a new lawyer presents the updated will. To everyone's shock, the president had changed everything before his death. Half of his fortune is left to his granddaughter, the governor's wife, and the other half to the governor himself. Chaos erupts. Accusations of forgery fill the room, but the protagonist remains silent. Later, the businessman approaches him, desperate, begging for help. The protagonist agrees, but on one condition: he must support him in the election. It is revealed that the protagonist had hidden his true identity all along, ensuring that the president would trust him and grant him protection. Now he needs power to stand against the governor and bring him down completely. With that, the stage is set. The governor announces his candidacy once again, meaning he and the protagonist will face each other directly in the election. Both sides begin their campaigns, turning the battle into a public war for power. But in the middle of all this, a devastating truth emerges. The protagonist's wife falls ill. After undergoing medical tests, she receives the news that changes everything. She has cancer, and it is already in an advanced stage. She walks away silently, her heart heavy, carrying the weight of a battle far more personal than anything they have faced before. She sits with the protagonist and his team, holding back tears as she tries to stay strong. Despite her pain, she continues to support him, encouraging him not to give up, even as her illness slowly begins to take a toll on her. Her presence, fragile yet determined, becomes a source of strength for everyone around her. At the same time, the governor and his wife hold a high-level meeting with the board members of the media company. In a calculated move, they succeed in removing the businessman from his position as CEO. With that single decision, the businessman loses nearly all of his power and influence overnight, becoming just another piece in a much larger game. From him, the protagonist learns a crucial detail. The president had a son living in the United States, a man who had cut ties with his father long ago. The businessman warns him that this son is extremely difficult to deal with, but the protagonist sees an opportunity. He asks him to track the son down so they can file a legal claim for inheritance. By doing this, they might be able to secure a portion of the president's fortune and regain some leverage. Meanwhile, the governor, now fully aware of the threat, tries to eliminate the protagonist from the election race. He fabricates a case against him, accusing him of fraud and corruption. But the protagonist fights back, appearing on a televised interview where he confronts the accusations directly. During this time, his wife begins investigating the sewage explosion incident more deeply. Her search leads her to a fish farm that appears to be operating under a chemical company linked to the president. Sensing something suspicious, she gathers the protagonist's ally, the gang leader, and his men, and they storm the farm. There, they capture the manager and record a confession. He reveals that the farm is nothing more than a front, used to dispose of toxic waste coming from the chemical factory. The substance produced by the factory emits dangerous radiation, and the contaminated sewage water has been directly responsible for the rising number of cancer cases in the city, including the illness of the protagonist's wife. As the governor continues trying to pressure the protagonist to withdraw from the election, everything changes in a single moment. The protagonist's wife suddenly appears live on television during the interview. With tears in her eyes, she reveals the truth. She has cancer, and it was caused by radiation exposure from the sewage explosion. Her father and the protagonist are left shattered as they hear her words, but she continues speaking bravely, presenting the video of the fish farm manager confessing everything about the chemical company. The impact is immediate. Public opinion turns violently against the governor and his wife. The prosecution office opens an investigation, and the governor is brought in for questioning. Behind a glass wall, the protagonist and the businessman watch as he is interrogated. The governor senses their presence, even though he cannot see them, and confidently declares that they will never be able to prove anything against him. And for a moment, it seems like he's right. The evidence is deemed insufficient, and the case against him weakens. But the protagonist refuses to give up. He tells the governor's wife that they will exhume the president's body and prove that he was murdered. He also reveals that he has contacted the president's son and will pursue the inheritance claim. Despite everything, the governor wins the election against the protagonist, but the battle is far from over. Soon after, the governor's wife secretly sends a package to the protagonist's wife. Inside, they find a phone, one that belongs to the governor but was never registered under his name. It was his secret device. When the protagonist calls to confirm, she agrees to testify that it belongs to her husband. The protagonist files a case against the governor using this evidence, but when the court session arrives, the governor's wife does not appear. Suspicion rises, and the truth is soon revealed. The governor discovered her betrayal and had her forcibly placed in a psychiatric hospital. Without her testimony, the protagonist cannot prove the phone belongs to the governor. The case collapses, and he loses. At the same time, his wife's condition worsens. She is admitted to the hospital, and he sits beside her, heartbroken, watching her slowly fade. For all his power and victories, this is the one battle he cannot control. Days later, the governor is seen at his usual private swimming pool, relaxed and confident. As he steps out of the water, he is shocked to find the protagonist standing in front of him. Calmly, the protagonist tells him that he has bought the place, and then reveals the truth. He is Big Mouse. The governor laughs, convinced that no matter what, the protagonist can never defeat him. But suddenly, his expression changes. He begins to bleed, his body weakening, confusion taking over. The protagonist looks at him coldly and says that now he is drinking from the same cup as his victims. He had made him swim in water contaminated with the same radiation that destroyed so many lives. Without another word, he turns and walks away. Behind him, the governor collapses into the pool and dies. In the aftermath, everything falls into place. The protagonist, now fully transformed, destroys every enemy in his path. He forces the governor's wife to confess, exposing the secret laboratory and the radiation-contaminated water. This was the very research Dr. Seo had been killed for. The victims' families file a lawsuit and receive massive compensation from the chemical company. The 3 accused men are finally sentenced to 10 years in prison for their involvement in the crimes and for the murder of Dr. Seo. But victory comes at a devastating cost. The protagonist's wife does not survive. In the final moments, we see him driving alone, the silence around him heavier than ever. He looks at a photo from their wedding day, memories flooding back, her smile, her strength, her unwavering belief in him. And as he continues driving into the distance, carrying both his victory and his loss, and the story comes to an end. Subscribe for more videos like this one, tap the bell icon, and don't forget to like the video. Thanks for watching.